And I think that's where you see now a Bitcoin network, which has like this independent, decentralized network, which follows actually a rule book called the algorithm. For me, it's not a surprise. And now you say, why is that a big thing? Well, if I can sit here and say, I'm very likely based on that Bitcoin will be at 1 million in 8 to 9 years. I can stop right there. I don't have to know more. If I'm interested in money, if I'm interested in saving and preserving my wealth, it's not a model. Actually, it's something really based on a setup. It's sort of like inherent that we expect a power law. You can see I have pinned the power law literally from Giovanni. It's like from 2019. So I haven't changed anything. And what this post shows is like, if you use exactly the data, the parameter, there are only two, and really assume what's the price from today, then you will come to 120, 130,000 now. It used to be there a while ago. When it was done, the Bitcoin price was at, yeah, exactly.
Hi, Pius. How are you doing? Everything fine on your end?
Thank you very much, Robin. Yes, I'm doing very well. Thanks.
There's so many interesting topics with you because one thing that comes to my mind is the whole TradFi thing coming into Bitcoin. And we're talking about the Bitcoinization of TradFi. The power law is one thing that is really interesting for people. And we haven't talked about it since quite some time on the podcast. I think Giovanni was like a few months ago on the podcast. Maybe a whole different question. What is kind of the most interesting thing for you right now in Bitcoin? What is the topic or the conversation that is kind of fascinating you the most within Bitcoin?
Well, I think for me, the most fascinating part in Bitcoin is indeed the power law. That is the fascinating thing. And sort of like the feeling as well that suddenly, and you mentioned Giovanni, who brought it out, I think 2 years ago on X, and his idea goes back, I think, to much earlier, 2018, 19, when he posted it on I think Reddit or Quora, one of these platforms. I think for a while, and I didn't understand it, I immediately got the idea, and I loved it, being mathematician by training, not by work, but training. And actually I grew up in a similar type of field, like fractal geometry and nonlinear systems. So I immediately got that test, like, yeah, that it's like interesting, and actually even is something you should expect if you have a decentralized, self-organized system. You should expect that a power law behavior emerges. That's actually, if it didn't emerge, then that would be actually strange. Now, philosophically, so like high level. But so he found that, and I was quite intrigued. And I was surprised that somehow people didn't take it seriously, didn't listen to him, didn't invite him. I think he now lately gets invitation to Bulgaria, and I think he spoke in Amsterdam. I've seen him, and I met him in Munich. Not only he's a great guy, Giovanni, I ignore that for a second. I really like him a lot on that level. This is a very deep idea. If you're doing Bitcoin, say, listen, I so like not telling you where Bitcoin price is tomorrow and the day after, but I tell you on a scale where I expect Bitcoin to be in 5-10 years, because it's actually almost like an organism, which is growing. And based on that, on a power law, which has been very robust, going back for the last 16 and a half, almost 17 years now, you can actually sort of like quite confident that the power law keeps on working very well. And it's not a model. Actually, it's something really based on a setup. It's sort of like inherent that you expect a power law. And I think I'm surprised that the Bitcoin community didn't really embrace that, didn't really talk too much about that. And lately, I think it's coming through the system. Because for me, it's the best argument. If for example, right now, Bitcoin is all over the map, 126, 125,000 K, now it dropped down to 90K, and people are like, what does it mean? And that's nice. That's nice. So I think that's for me is the most fascinating story, and I'm quite happy as well that more and more people take a look at that, talk about that, and even believe that guys like uh, uh, Michael Saylor, who's like considered a cult person, is like he never really says it, but his predictions, his price predictions, actually sort of like almost match the power law. And I find it a bit strange, for example, when he says in 20 years, Bitcoin going to be at 10 million, 12, I think he says 12 million, 30 million. Power law comes roughly the same number, 10 to 11 million. But then he says, well, the reason is the global wealth going to be at 4 trillion then. And if you assume wealth grows to 4 trillion and Bitcoin going to be 7% of the global, like why 7? Why not 2? Why not 15? It's like, that's strange. So I think there's a bit reverse engineering what he does to actually derive the same now, because he knows that he's a highly trained, highly intelligent guy, and he's fully aware of it.
Yeah, he understands math coming from the MIT. He definitely does.
Very well. Very, very well. So,
and it's interesting for me because I think it's less understood just because it's a little bit of a harder topic for people. Like most people don't necessarily learn about the power law in school, or like something that they kind of have to grasp. And then you also have to grasp like how, and you told this to me, I think when we went to the restaurant, when you first saw Giovanni talk about, oh, Bitcoin is a power law, it was very easily for you to understand because you understood the power law and you understood, okay, like things grow naturally and then the network effects come to play. So it was an almost an easy idea for you to get. But I think most people probably haven't heard about the power law. I heard with Giovanni the first time about the power law. That's why our first episode, I think the first 1 hour, he just explained it to me and I'm like, what the heck is that? And so maybe that's, I think the reason why people don't understand the power law is the reason why they don't understand the power law with Bitcoin, I guess.
Yeah, that could be as well, and I think as well it has to do that people believe like, how would you even come up with an idea that physics and math applies here? Why would that even like so? Because it's a market, it's like people trade with each other, and it's really unusual, and that models work. And by the way, I am the perfect example. I'm usually a guy who would say, of a guy who says, do not trust any model. I made during my Wall Street career in a subprime space. I was a derivatives trader. I used models to derive a price. But I understood as well to always try to understand the models of the guy on the other side and to say, what's the weakness? And on a bigger level, I got it as well that all the models we had, just big picture, they're bullshit. That's not gonna. So like, even the model tells me I have to buy X, Y, Z amounts of subprime to hedge my short position. Like, nah, not gonna follow the model. I don't believe that for a second, because even it tells me I should be doing that, it's wrong in my view. So I don't. I tend not to. I tend to be very careful around models. And by the way, the same beyond that, not financial markets. Even when people talk about models and climate change, I'm like, really, like that's not how science actually works. But here is something totally different at work. Here is as we said, a system of totally decentralized, a lot of different nodes interacting with each other. Constantly energy is being added. Like you need energy. New people are being added. And based on that, these are the qualitative characteristics where you say you expect the power law. That's the way, for example, we human beings, we have all these billions and billions of cells, and we have the neurons working, and they're being formed. When you really zoom down, that looks very simple, everything, and there's nothing special. But the fact how it adds together, and we add constantly energy, we need 2,000 calories every day. which I talk about that one for a second. It's not a power law. We grow, and it emerges something like you, me, and the human beings. And the power law was made actually very famous by, not famous, but it's actually a Swiss guy, Max Kleiber. And he did it exactly. He said, look at animals, look at actually, animals of different size, including people as well, and their consumption of energy they use every day. And what you see is like you have a little ant, you have a mouse, you have a cat, you have a dog, you have a human, you have a horse, you have a bear, and then you have a blue whale. So everything on a like scale where you have like the weight is the X and the Y is the energy consumption, the daily. Looks like everything is like packed into the corner, and then the blue whale is somehow up there. That's what you expect, what you see. But what he did was interesting. He said, just take a different lens. Just use now steps by the power of 10. So instead of saying 10, 100, 1000, you say 10 is 10 times 10. So it's like 100 is 10 times 10. So it's 2. 1000 is 10 to the power of 3. So it's 3. So take that. That's a log scale. And he did that on both axes. And it was like a straight line. A straight line. And now you would say a blue whale looks totally different from an ant and from us, obviously. How is that possible? Now, then there was this wonderful work done by this guy, Geoffrey West, from Santa Fe Institute, which actually is the institute which studies nonlinear systems going back the last 30, 40 years. Very fascinating research that do. And he said, it's actually that's where power law comes to place, because you have all the cells working together and it emerges what emerges. And it's the underlying, actually it's very simple, the underlying rules, but then you can build some very complex, fascinating systems. And I think, and a last example where you see it maybe best, ants. Ants are these really weird little creatures. Each little ant is not really intelligent. There's nothing happening. You can have 20 ants on your table that run around in an erratic way. If you have millions of them, somehow they're communicating and they're building wonderful, buildings and structures and bridges emerges out of this like very simple beast called ants. And I think that's where you see now Bitcoin network, which has like this independent, decentralized network, which follows actually a rule book called the algorithm. It's like that's what is supposed to happen, and constantly energy is being added as we speak. And I think that's therefore is only for me, it's not a surprise. And now you say, why is that a big thing? Well, if I can sit here and say, very likely based on that, Bitcoin will be at 1 million in 8 to 9 years. I think that's I don't have to know. I can stop right there. I don't have to know more. If I'm interested in money, if I'm interested in saving and preserving my wealth, that's exactly what I want. How we get there, that's an interesting thing. People will do different things. There will be another Michael Saylor. There will be something in the DeFi market, and people talk about how is AI and Bitcoin working. It happens in different things. And I think to the last point, it's important as well. What I did when you go on to, for example, on my X account, I made them advertising Pius the banker. So I don't have a book, I don't do, but that's the only thing I do. Like publicly, you can see, I have pinned the power law literally from Giovanni. It's like from 2019. So I haven't changed anything. And what this post shows is like, it uses the original post done by him. I said, made public by this German-American guy, what's his name? Forgotten, Harold Berger. So, and say, okay, if I use exactly the data, the parameter, there are only two, and really assume what's the price from today, then you will come to 120, 130,000. Now, it used to be there a while ago. When it was done, the Bitcoin price was at, exactly. it was September 2019 was at 8,000. So we went to a factor of 10. And what happened between that? That's very important as well. Back then, we would have said Bitcoin should be around the price we are here, maybe slightly higher. But what happened then? It happened, Bitcoin went to 67,000 in 2021, dropped down to 15, 16,000 in order to go back, bounce back to 125,000. So nobody could know in 2019 that we're going to have an ETF, that we're going to have Donald Trump, that we're going to have a Michael Saylor, he started in 2020 in August, or that in the meantime, you have Sam Bankman-Fried ending up in prison, you have the FTX scandal, all the lending platforms, DeFi platforms, which like got really busted, and the SEC. A lot of things happened. But guess what? It didn't matter. The power law does whatever it does. So therefore, what will be the reason why I think Bitcoin will go to 1 million? I cannot tell you, or like, because people are like, oh, could it be that and that? Like, I don't know. That's a beautiful thing. I didn't have to know that in 2019. I would have never predicted Trump gonna win 2024, or that we're gonna have a Michael Saylor, or that BlackRock gonna launch the ETF, and the SEC said it's absolutely fine. So I think that's a beautiful thing. I don't have to know any of that.
So, so is the main reason that Bitcoin follows a power law because it acquires real world energy and has the proof of work concept? Is that like the main reason for why the power law actually applies and the power law doesn't apply to like altcoins and things like that?
Yeah, I think energy is important, that you constantly have energy in. That's very important. That it's a highly decentralized system. That's actually, that's the key thing. It's decentralized in terms of like the mining, the participants, who is buying and selling. So that's very important as well. And very important for power law to work is that there are constantly new people join. That's important as well. If you just have a network which has the same amount of participants with literally no energy in and out, there's not going to be a power law. So that has been well studied in a network science, so science in its own. But I think if you have a growing system, like new participants, fresh energy, decentralized, and now another key point, you have certain hubs. What do I mean by that? Not equal. Every node is equal in terms of like, for example, I'm on the internet. I'm not a hub. I have like, or in an X, I have like 9,000 followers. Michael Saylor is a hub. He has like millions. Elon Musk is a hub. He has 200 million. You are so like a mini hub because you have much more. You see what I mean? There are different orders. And in Bitcoin, you have the same. You have like the exchanges, massive hubs. You have Michael Saylor, a big hub. And then you have like guys like me, like little hubs here. And then the little miners and miners at home. So that's critical as well. They're not all equal. They have their own hubs as well. And there's been tremendous research done already 20 years ago. And so because of Bitcoin, because it came about with the emergence of the internet. People started that's the ultimate like network where suddenly people are being connected, and that's been studied. Mathematically, it has been studied 50, 60 years ago, but not in the same rigorous manner because they assumed usually there's a fixed amount of participants, it's not growing. But then, of course, you have like suddenly the massive network effect. We have the McCulloch law, which is well known for decades now, that like a growing network, the value grows with the number of participants squared, which is easy to prove mathematically. Roughly, it's not exactly squared. So I think that's the point, that the network has been studied because of the internet, and now you have the wonderful, beautiful network called Bitcoin. Now, why doesn't it work for altcoin? I haven't really studied that in details. I've spoken to, I think, Giovanni. He studied that in much more details. It doesn't work for companies, and I think it doesn't really start for Bitcoin, for altcoins, because they have issuers, they have management. Ultimately, Ethereum, there's a management team behind. You know who founded it. It's a company actually incorporated in Zug next to Zurich, Switzerland. So these are company structures. So there's some centralization. Bitcoin, I think, why it works as well is because there's a guy, Satoshi Nakamoto, who nobody knows who he was, what he was, where he was, and just disappeared. And it's no issue. And I think that's an interesting point as well, because the SEC got it intuitively right to say Bitcoin is a commodity. It's not a security. And all the other securities. And I would say it like that. The minute you are a security, you're very likely not going to follow power law.
I talked about because we mentioned it before we started recording the Bulgaria the presentation I gave, and I talked in the presentation about foundational inventions. I talked about the wheel, fire, but also the internet, so the TCP/IP protocol and those kind of layers, and what the difference is to Facebook, Google, and the TCP/IP protocol. Like there's a massive difference between product and protocol layer. Are protocols like the wheel as a concept or the TCP/IP protocol, are those all following the power law because they have similar attributes and they are decentralized as an idea?
I haven't looked into that, so I don't really want to speculate whether that's on the wheel. I wouldn't really. Well, you would have to say, okay, how many people adopted the wheel? How did that happen? So I would assume it very likely follows power law, things like that. When you have something where there's like I've seen an your presentation, parts of that. I think that one a great slide. I think it's very, very deep system type of thinking what you presented. But for example, the internet, yes, I think that has clear the adoption rates, how people adopt to the internet over time. I think that has been well studied. That's where actually the power law idea came from. When you look at the number of participants on the internet and a network over time, how does it behave? That really follows power laws, and so many levels you can measure that. Yes, with a wheel, that's not. I wouldn't like to comment on that one.
I have to throw that question to Giovanni, I guess.
Yeah, he might then spend the whole night and study that. So he's much more qualified to answer that than I am.
One more question to Paolo I have, because people ask a lot, especially new people, like why shouldn't Bitcoin fail? Like, why can't this whole thing not just like stop working? And when I listen to the power law, and it has all those attributes of like it's decentralized, there's energy in and out, it grows, like new people joining, and then also the different hubs as you explained it. Is there a point in a power law where it also could break down, or is there a point in a power law where it is naturally just growing further because the power law is kind of saying that?
I would not now make the prediction to say it's going to go on for hundreds of years. I think that would be quite a stretch, but I would say it's might be working very well for it works very well for next 20, 25 years. I wouldn't like to go beyond that because, a lot of things will then change as well. Like could be a overall change of the system, paradigm shifts, which means not necessarily Bitcoin is changing, but just the way the world functions around us will change. So I think, don't forget, there's this wonderful, futuristic guy called Ray Kurzweil, American guy. He's like one of the most celebrated many years ago futurist research people in the world. And he wrote in 2006, I haven't read that, but I'm just about to read the new book. I think the book about AI and how it's going to change the world. So his book is called Singularity is Near. And here he describes actually how AI going to change the world. And I think for him, the singularity is like almost like everything's like upside down. Everything just changes. To this point, I think we'll be in the 40s. So that's now more like outside of Bitcoin thinking that we as human beings, and that's again, power law, we have the tendency, we think in, and that served us very well, by the way. We think in linear ways. We think linearly. That's Ray Kurzweil, a fascinating person.
I heard about it. Interesting.
Yeah. So I just actually bought and started to read yesterday. That he's got a newer one. The Singularity is Nearer. I think he published that in 2024. That one is from 2006. So and I think we see a massive paradigm shift. And as human beings, we have the tendency we think linearly. Therefore, we have very, very hard. We're very tough. No, we are very challenged, I have to say, when it comes to exponential growth, nonlinear effects. We don't really understand that very well, but we didn't have to understand it. You know, if a tiger was coming around the corner, like 50,000 years ago, like the first instinct is like, just run. You don't really, or like if somebody throws a ball at you, you have like very like gut feels and like make very simple, like we have being trained to have like shortcuts to be able to catch the ball. So we are not solving differential equations in our head at the time to like, how do I catch the ball? So, which is what's going on here. And I think that's exactly here. So therefore, we are very well done in our survive in nature, but we are not great when it comes to technology and suddenly systems who work on, as you say, protocols. Non-linearity is kicking in. AI kicking in. I think we cannot even grasp what it means. So, but even to give an idea there, and we can make Bitcoin. And when in 2022, ChatGPT was launched, I must have been a subscriber number 2. I did it the day after. Like I heard about like, oh, it's great. I played around. It was fantasizing. We know that. 2.5 years later, unbelievable results, and we're at the beginning. So I think that's what's happening. Therefore, to make a protection be beyond 20 years, I think we are in a different world, and I believe Bitcoin will play a very, very critical part of that in the way of payment, even in the different way, because it has a lot of characteristic which. What Microseed, I think he's right when he says it's the digital gold of the 21st century. It sort of like fits to what we have. Like you and I, we talk now via the internet. It was not imaginable even like 20 years ago. They could do it like that. Almost feels natural. And I think the way we're going to talk about money will be totally different. And therefore the power law will, I think at some point, not function the way we see today.
Yeah, it's interesting how podcasts kind of evolved over time. There was a time where only in-person podcasts really were popular, and now when you see how many popular and big podcasts, like I'm talking like 10x, 100x the size of me, are there, and they're doing some of the episodes or even like most of the episodes remotely. It's kind of crazy to think about. Like in 2020 or 2019 or before 2020, it was almost like, it's not in person. It's kind of not that good of a podcast, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. That changed a lot. But that just
Quick.
shows you how technology changes and how technology shapes us. We get used to that. We just like it's like before I jumped on the call, I was very quickly go through my email, like, okay, I'm here, and like we can talk. It's beautiful, and therefore, and that only happens now in the last 4 or 5 years. Can you imagine what's now and therefore in 20 years? The world will be a different one. Therefore, coming back to the power law to say we will be beyond 2025, 2045. That's the world will be a totally different beast. And I'm not in the position to say how it's going to look like. And I'm not in that camp. And that's another thing. I'm not going to say, oh, the world and that and that and that. And it's going to be strange, a mixture and hybrid between machines and humans. I don't know, but I think the power law of Bitcoin will work very well for the next 20 years.
Yeah, it's hard to understand what the outcome is be. I mean, if we go back to the wheel, um, nobody, the wheel I looked it actually up, it was 5,500 years ago, roughly, when it first kind of like got invented or like discovered, however you want to frame it. For the first few people that saw it, it was kind of hard to imagine that the wheel all of a sudden got used into planes, into flying things, into trains, into cars. Like, it's kind of hard to grasp.
Yeah, it's, and that's, I think, is the whole thing about a diverse, decentralized idea, and I think society and Bitcoin does that. And I think your slide, I looked at it, it started like this, was like a really deep slide about system behavior. That's much deeper than, oh, there's a product in the company. It's like, nah. And you're right. It was like the real, I think, was like the Steam engine, which the first time actually we could create more GDP than our human power can do. We could go, and animals, we could go beyond that. We had machines and then the internet, of course, and now we have now we have the Bitcoin network, and I think that's, for me, as I always say, I think that's the biggest idea since they introduced counting, I think, hundreds of years during the Venetian times, which really changed the world, which was important to have that. Again, that's something which is, people say, counting. Why is counting important? Again, that was very important to enable sales, trading with each other, to say, oh, I can measure that. Oh, it's like, did that make money, not make money? So suddenly, like, the double T counting was like very important, an idea. Again, it's a system idea almost. Looks so simple. And I think the same you would say when you think like a Gutenberg's printing press. These are system ideas. How would that changed the world? That changed the world. That suddenly it introduced science. Ideas are getting bigger. Less importance of church and even states to a certain extent, and kings. I think Bitcoin is doing exactly that to money.
And I also love, and because when I see the Paolo people, they are less religious. I feel like sometimes Bitcoiners get almost religious with their Bitcoin idea and what it actually means, and it's more about the conviction and the math and what actually Bitcoin is fundamentally as a network. So I really appreciate that.
I think that's a very important point. I think that's like, it's like, I worked for many years on Wall Street. As a trader, you don't have, like, the worst thing you can have as a trader, then you're a really terrible guy. When you have religion to your positions and to your, whatever you think, to your boss or whatever, like, that's like, the market doesn't care what your boss thinks about your positions and what you think about that. The market is the market. And I think secondly as well, ego. To say, I'm a smartest guy. And I agree. Bitcoin maxis especially, they have a tendency to can become very angry. It's like a very angry, like, why don't you understand? Like, and I'm not there. I think Bitcoin as well, therefore I love the power law so much for Bitcoin, is it's not religious. It does the following. Say, Western society evolved had so beautifully since the Enlightenment because of science. Because actually printing press, science, less influence of church. Galileo Galilei challenged the Catholic Church, the Pope. Got in trouble for that, but like, I don't agree what you guys taught for the last 2000, like back then, 1,500 years. I don't believe in that. We are not in the center of the universe, and so on. And I think now we have something like a power law emerges, and now you sit here and say, it's so, as Western people trained to follow the big ideas of science. It's not just blind models, which you can verify, you can check. I think to say, well, actually, that's a huge idea. And if that works, I can stop, as I always say, I can stop right here. If I'm thinking about making a little money, I can stay right here because then I think I'm going to make 10 times the money next 8 to 9 years. So nothing going to beat that easily. Or if I invest in other things that's going to be more important, again, it will be then at a 20 billion market cap or 25 billion market cap as big as gold. There's all those things. Instead of I think that really gives you as well peace in your mind and in your conviction. Say, okay, if you want to argue with that and what I've seen and what my data shows, you can. I'm cool for me, and I think that's important as well, and that fits to that. I Giovanni did physics. I studied mathematics with minor physics. I did my PhD in mathematics, and then I became a trader doing something totally different. But why did I choose mathematics? Now, I was a good student at math. I loved it when I was a kid. But the older I got, I understood it now more why I did actually something. I sort of grew up in an environment where I was from a little farm, a lot of money. My father and my mother went about stuff. We were 5 kids. I was a little one. And, who cares about a little kid from a farm? Nobody cares. And most people usually don't study and do anything. But I want to study math. And what intrigued me was very interesting, was the following. It didn't matter whether I'm this 15, 16-year-old kid or later in university, how old I am, what my background is, whether I have money or I'm a poor guy. If I'm able to prove a certain theory, a certain sentence, I'm as relevant, or at this point more relevant, than the 50, 60-year-old professor at the university with all his assistants, because I did it and he was not able to do it. And the beautiful thing is everybody can check it and verify it. So it has nothing to do with authority. I love the idea always. Now that makes a big difference. And now comes the money system. Social sciences. It's all about freaking authority. That's a professor. That's Keynes. And from that, we derive all different schools. And then, of course, the Austrian school, less relevant, didn't really make it. Marx is the philosopher, is the authority. And the worst thing can happen for Bitcoiners if they introduce this type of social science type of approach to Bitcoin world and the mindset. Oh, but this guy, this. Therefore, I don't even like the Michael Saylor type thing. This Carlton, that guy. I couldn't care less. Because when you think it's science, it's math, it's physics, there is no authority. Just look at the data. And therefore, that's a powerful message. And by the way, if in math, and that's the dangers, and if in mathematics suddenly you introduce social science, and then you say, oh, but look at that and that guy, that's a risk by way of Bitcoin on a higher level, then actually you don't lose social science, you just lose math. So therefore, I think it's a beautiful idea.
I always hate when people bring up, but he said so. Oh, it's you didn't even bother to think for yourself.
That's but that's a risk. What we talked about hubs earlier on. That's a bit of a risk even in the Bitcoin world. I've seen it. Oh, but Michael Saylor, what the hell does he know what we don't know? Yeah, he has a bit more money than you. I don't know what I have, definitely. I know that.
Also more than me.
And yes, he's a better known guy and he's important. He has his function. But to say, oh, but now but he said it and there's a cult figure. I don't like this type of stuff at all. Because I can tell you, I don't know where Bitcoin is in 1 year, 1.5 years exactly. And this type of prediction I won't make. But I can say on a scale, longer term, that's the behavior, the long-term behavior. And is it going to be in 8 to 9 years at 1 million, or is it at 1.5 or at 750,000? Who knows? It's going to be somewhere in a channel, very likely. And that's good enough to know. And yeah, absolutely. This idea, but this guy said, and he's so no, I'm not buying that.
I have an interesting opinion on that whole thing, and I'm curious what you think about that. Because I think a lot of people search for confirmation. They have a hunch, they have like an idea of something, and maybe they hold Bitcoin. But then if it breaks down or like crashes down like 10%, 20%, 30%, like it does now, they really search for someone to say, you are fine. Like, hold on to it. It will be tremendous. It goes to 10 million. Like, does all those things. It's almost that like hand holding. And I always say to those people, like, if Bitcoin goes down by 20%, 30%, and you're fearful on that, the only thing that you did wrong is not study deep enough, not look at it deep enough. Because if you have conviction, you know what Bitcoin is, you know this thing is actually great, and it going down actually means you have the great thing just cheaper right now, which is a great thing. Like, you get more freedom, you get more sovereignty, you get more UTXOs. If you know where Bitcoin is going, that's actually a great thing for you to do. And there's a lot of like confirmation searchers, a lot of people that, oh, I trust this guy and I want him to say Bitcoin is still fine and he is still holding. Like, there's a lot of those things going on, especially online.
Yeah, that's true. Having said that, Roman, you need sort of like two things. I think as humans, we tend to like to get some confirmation, because otherwise you're a lonely guy. And I've seen in my own career, I talked about that in 2005. My boss, Craig Lipman, Big Short, by Gosling. Everybody should watch that great movie. And I was second guy. I'm not in a movie. People like, my trade is not me. I was the last trade against Morgan Stanley, where they lost a lot. We won a lot. We shorted the subprime market in 2005. And everybody wanted to buy it, and we were the only guy in town who said you should short. We went to all the conferences. It was almost funny. Like in the room next to us, my room was like all the guys. It was filled with people. It was like, oh, how can I buy more of that? How can it be structured subprime? And in my room, like one experience I remember was like in Arizona. I flew down there, and the room next to me, like in the room I came after, the speaker talked about mortgage origination, subprime, best thing, slice spread was invented. And then I came. Craig was another panel, so I came and gave my speech. And it was so bizarre. I walked in, I sort of like knew Craig, and like, it's typical Deutsche Bank short story. And they pretty much left the room. It was like three guys sitting there, like two were from our bank. I'm like, okay, that's strange. Nobody wants to listen to me. So you feel very lonely. And you really ask yourself, no, I'm not the smartest guy on the planet. Neither is my boss. So how did that happen that all these Harvard guys think they're complete morons? And these questions were asked by our management from Frankfurt, like, and London, like, who the F are you guys that you think you know something, which these guys were like all the, like, do you have a Harvard degree? No, I don't have. Craig, like, I don't freaking, I don't know, but not really. What's Harvard? So, and of course, it's very tough to go through that. And then you see as well, the market is always going more and more up, works against you as well. So, but if you study that, if you really get very, what you say, very deep into that, and you say, you know, maybe we are really morons, maybe we are really wrong, and everybody else is right. Could be. Unlikely, but okay. But if we are right, it's great for us. And it was. And what you learned as well, that then during the crisis, everybody was shell-shocked. And so were we, by the way. We didn't expect that outcome. And suddenly you look again towards the others, and especially your bosses, your authority. Oh, these guys, they know how to fix that. They had no clue. The system almost went down. Almost. They didn't know what to do. And I think this is the lesson as well. If you think that the Michael Saylor gonna rescue there, then you shouldn't be in the space. As you say, on the other hand, of course, it's important as well that people make certain investment stuff which they didn't study themselves because they trust. But therefore, who should you trust? It's important as well to trust people. I trust people, with a certain track record. I trust people who are very open, say, I don't know. I cannot tell you. I will be, and that's what I tell guys. I'm not going to tell you Bitcoin will be at 150 next week. You see that online. I can't. I wouldn't tell you that. But I can tell you this is my biggest argument is power law, and what I've seen it with full set, it gives me a lot of I think a lot of conviction. And there are so many other elements, and on top of that, I was coming from this different system, so that looks like a real big thing to me, and it's I think as the biggest thing I can imagine what we're gonna have during our lifetime in the financial world. And I wouldn't say that if I didn't think so. And people know me for a long time, and they might have their opinion, but it's about like, yes, can I be wrong? Absolutely, but I think it's about being truthful as well, and not just trying to sell something. I think that's maybe is an important topic which fits into here. But I think right now I see in the Bitcoin world, which is not healthy, you see a lot of copycats of the same idea, for example, Microseed idea. And suddenly this whole thing becomes into a very bit salesy type of story. Oh, it's always going to go up. It's always going to, I think you're going to attract people, which so like some people I heard having this, like some Bitcoin treasuries firms. I'm not going to come up with a name, like the very smaller one. I don't even think they know what Bitcoin is, even in the simplest way. And suddenly they're like, oh, how can I make 10 times the money? How can I make 100 times the money? So some will do very well. I'm not saying it's all, but there's big differences, and some of them will hurt people, and I don't like that. But here, we adults, we have to make our free decisions. So therefore, trust is important as well, but trust people you followed for, personally best, and you followed for a while, who even admit as well if they're wrong. It's very important. If someone say, I was wrong here, it's very important. That was on Wall Street. I learned that if you are sitting on trade, the trade is wrong, you lose money. You have to say, I adapt to that. I say, I was wrong. I was stupid. I lose money here, and be open about that and move on. And I'd say, yeah, but look, and because of the guy here, I got no. Don't do the gaslighting. So I would say, do not trust people who gaslight, and that's easy to figure out.
Yeah, taking responsibility for your own actions and owning decisions is like really big. Do you see, because of the treasury companies and because like also BlackRock and like more and more of TradFi coming into Bitcoin, that like Wall Street and those guys are now slowly waking up to what Bitcoin is?
Yeah. I can see that. Absolutely. I think ETF is a big thing, was a big thing. Now, it's less for Wall Street because ETF is a very simple product. It's like exchange traded fund that don't need a lot of people. The fees are little. So investment bankers are not even involved. So that's not really their fund side. Investment bankers like, of course, MicroStrategy, because they have a lot of like stuff to place and constant to place. Now, if MicroStrategy places preferred shares, which I think he placed around 7-8 billion of them, then investment banks always take a cut. And of course, let's say they make a lot of living out of it. So he feeds quite a few of these investment bankers with that. So he's a good client of Wall Street. And therefore, Wall Street, of course, and say, oh, if that guy gives us so much money, how can we create more of these type of clients? That's what you see there. For that, you suddenly see all these guys coming out of the woods. And by the way, I think some will be successful. Having said that, right now they're in a tough place, but some you will have, and it always happens, then just a lot of these companies which don't make money are gonna lose people a lot of money. And Wall Street has a tendency to blow things up. They go crazy on an idea. Everybody piles in because they have a wonderful machine running. And then if it doesn't work out, they walk the other direction. Is Wall Street really waking up on a bigger level, on a much bigger level, to Bitcoin outside of like MicroStrategy and the ETFs? I'm not sure actually. Do they really believe? Do they really talk about Bitcoin as a potential new way of thinking about money? I don't think so actually. Because that's speaking to bankers. Most bankers I know, for them it's no, they actually don't care because they're like, okay, how can I find a way to stand in the middle and make a bit of money? But they're not really studying anything about Bitcoin at all. Like what you said, Robin, do you think they're going to study and listen to your podcast and say, I want to understand? No, because they're very busy. They're always running. And that's okay. Can I make a big buck here? And what's going to be my bonus being paid in January, February next year? And hopefully it's big. So, and so that's the game they are playing, which is a total different one than when you are in the Bitcoin world. So no, I think they just always go for the easy, quick solution and then try to replicate it and scale it up. So if you have one microsailor, they are trying to breed a lot of microsailors on the back of that until it doesn't work anymore, and then I move on. So I think they're still far away.
It's interesting how you said it, how the investment banker thinks, how can I stay in the middle and make money? Like that's funny.
That was my job for a long time. It's always like when something was going on, the first question you always ask as a trader, how can I get in the middle? That's like, it's like, I don't have to know anything, but like, how can I get in the middle and to make a bid offer? There's nothing wrong with that. But what bankers don't do, very important. It's like when you look towards a banker to say, he just had an innovation, how he creates something. No, usually whatever they innovate, you should stay away from. That's usually not a good thing. I was unfortunately often on the fabrication of the stuff as well. So I know what I'm talking about. But that's again, it's like the way, how can we make money out of that? And I don't think it's an unethical approach. Again, I don't feel that people who do that or that I was a bad guy doing that. Like, I don't have an obligation towards counterparties or towards the behavior of people. They make their own decisions, and by the way, they shouldn't have it towards me either. If I lose money on my job, they shouldn't really care, and they don't. And I find it healthy. And that comes back to the Bitcoin. I think people, as you said, they should trust, but ultimately learn as well to be responsible for their own actions and not to say, oh, I thought of that, because nobody going to help you at the end of the day. But that's not only true for Bitcoin. It's your decision you make in life. And Bitcoin, I think it's just a very good way, not just like making money, but I think will happen as well, like to create accountability, to say, this is what I have, this is how I save. And I think it can change your life if you really think deeply. And it took even for me a long time, what actually Bitcoin can do. It grows slowly over time. And there's for some people, but stay away from people who try to sell something to you. That's I would say.
I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need. The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC free Bitcoin. That's why I use simplemining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control, and I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin, and let's mine Bitcoin together. I like that. I have one more before that. Maybe treasury companies are interesting for me also. I ignored or almost rejected treasury companies for the past 2 years. Now, last week, I was like, okay, I should own a little bit. Like, I just buy a little bit of strategy just because, like, when I have a little exposure, at least then I research deeper and then I can build a better opinion on that and all of that. Like, that's the same way I did actually with Bitcoin. The first time I bought Bitcoin, I thought it's a scam. But with buying some, I forced myself to research it a little bit deeper. How do you think about treasury companies, especially the treasury companies that don't have a business model? Of course, like if a profitable business has Bitcoin on the balance sheet, I think there's nothing wrong with that. But like, how do you look at treasury companies that are just treasury companies to buy more Bitcoin, like 21st Capital with Jack Mallers? I mean, strategies, and I think in their own sphere and their own league, what they're doing, and maybe then also smaller ones that kind of you're seeing.
Great question. I think on a trading level, I think it makes a lot of sense. On a structural level, which I'm now coming back from my Wall Street hat on, because you have on the asset side Bitcoins, which you expect to grow with an annualized compounding rate of, let's say, 35% for the next 10, 15 years. And now you finance that with something where you pay 7-8%. That's a winning trade. You have to do it from the morning to the evening. And in a nutshell, that's exactly what Microseed is doing. It's not doing anything else. And if you really get to know, often when people say, how can certain people become very rich? And I don't know, I wouldn't say it's luck, but I happened through my career, I met quite a few rich people. And rich means not rich what we often think in Europe, what people think. I talk about billions, 10, 20 billion type of people. And first of all, you see they have like 2 arms, a head that don't look different, because somehow people think they must look different. They look exactly the same as we do. Some of them are quite dumb, by the way. That's another thing. It's like got there by luck. It's fine. But I thought about but I think what most of these guys have in common is they understand what their own returns has great returns, 20, 30 more percent, because they own businesses or their own positions or real estate. And you say, well, I want to leverage it so much, which actually worthless paper money. It's called dollar, a euro. So I finance that. So that even gives them more wealth. So therefore, and it's interesting, they never really have cash. because they finance everything. And if they need money, they say, I go to the bank and get a new loan, which gives me cash to do something, to either buy more of it because I like real estate, because it grows so quickly. So based on that, I think Michael Saylor, yeah, this is absolutely fair. It's very simple business model. It's almost like bizarrely simple. Say, Bitcoin does what it does. It grows with 35%. I have to finance it with something which is not, which actually devaluates over time. Or as my old boss used to say, now really to sum it up, the Bitcoin Treasury on a bigger scale, Craig Clapman, his saying was always, go long quality and short shit. I think that's pretty much what you have here. Quality is Bitcoin, and the short is like financing in fiat. So that, yes. But now, do I think that now people should get involved, like buying all this random stuff and like, okay, there's this little guy. Now you could argue in the real estate market, you have a lot of REITs, real estate investment trusts, there's tons of them. So it's an idea which was great, I think, in the 70s and then suddenly exploded. And there are many of them. But here you could argue that over slightly different real estates, it's not all over the same, and you need operating expertise. I think Bitcoin treasury companies, you need access to capital markets. You need size. You have to be able to scale stuff properly. And Michael Saylor, I think, has a bit of a scale issue because he's so big that at some point, how much pressures and multiples can he place? But that's scale. Everybody knows him. But if you're a little guy, banks don't really care about you. You don't really get a loan. Everything becomes like, it becomes just more like a marketing story. There's nothing real behind. So I would stay away from that. That's the way it's tough. Maybe even a little guy can become very big if you have a good idea or it's like figures it out. But usually for the little guys, if they have an operating business behind, I think that can work. But just like to replicate Michael Saylor, I think that's very tough, because it's like a plane. You know, you need certain conditions that you're able to that the plane takes off, and not every little thing gonna fly. It's just gonna drop. So here's the same thing. You need the right engine. You need the right wings, you need the right technology, everything has to be, and then like, otherwise it's not going to fly. And I think that's the same with the Bitcoin companies, to think like, no, we look towards Michael Saylor. Now you're never going to be a Boeing. Maybe nowadays you don't want to have Boeing. So Airbus, you're never going to fly. And I think that's happened with a lot of his small Bitcoin companies. They're never going to fly. And what happens next here, that's now really become Wall Street language here. Right now, the Bitcoin treasury companies, Michael Saylor, the biggest by far, with 680,000 Bitcoin or something like that. He trades at a multiple of NAV. So pretty much that is the multiple which everybody talks about, which compares the underlying number of Bitcoin you have and the value of them, of around 1.2, 1.3. So pretty much what it means if you invest, if you actually invest $1.28, you get actually worth Bitcoin worth $1 only. That's pretty much what it means in a nutshell. But more and more Bitcoin companies, the smaller one, are trading below 1. And my prediction is, Robin, they're not just going to be staying below 1, they're going to drop to 0.5 and even lower. So because there's no liquidity, nobody cares. Nobody gets out. So everybody gets hurt. And banks won't finance that. Investors don't have interest in that. So it will be a very, very tough thing. So I think for Bitcoin treasury companies, size does matter.
Interesting. So Strategy has such a good position, not only because they are early, but because they have come to a huge size of having now like over 600,000 Bitcoin and liquidity and access to the market. Now they're also with the European project, and the other ones are just too small to matter to banks and give them loans and those products.
Absolutely. Jack Mallers has like great backers behind. I think it's Tether behind, if I remember correctly. It's SoftBank. It's my former employer, Ken Fitzgerald. I work like that's how they set it up. And then of course you have Michael Saylor. I think it's for others. It's going to be very, very tough. So I like the idea very much. I thought, but in order that the idea works, you have to start very big at day one. Jack Mallers got that. Marcus Saylor got that. You have to start with a huge, not only Bitcoin, this thing has to have decent size. But if you're trapped at like 200 million or in the teens, 20, 30, 40 million, it's almost impossible to get out of there. How would you do that? And I think very likely investors going to lose patience and they're going to get hurt. That's my prediction. Now you will say it doesn't matter because Bitcoin ultimately going to go up, but again, what does it tell me? If Bitcoin may go from 100,000 to 300,000, but your NAV drops from 90 to 30, like still haven't changed. And by the way, these companies do exist. I'm not going to quote it now, but offline I will tell you. There's a company been around for a long time, actually even operating. They have 3,700 Bitcoins. Their share price, and since 2016, 17, their share price is below the 2017 share price. People should study that. That's my prediction. What's going to happen to most of these Bitcoin treasury companies? Bitcoin since then went up 10 times and this company went down. And how do you feel about that? And I think that is a type of risk I see with these Bitcoin treasury companies, the smaller one.
Now, is it fair to say that if Bitcoin is successful and becomes huge and dominant and almost like a global money, that the company that owns the most Bitcoin will also be the biggest company in terms of like maybe strategy, maybe another company that can outrun them, even though it gets harder and harder?
Oh, okay. So yeah, that's something. Yeah, you could argue, of course, if let's assume take MicroStrategy for a moment. Right now, I think the market cap is around $65 billion. It's almost like, let's call it like, and I have 680,000 Bitcoins. So of course, if Bitcoin were to go up over the next 20 years by a factor of 100, which Michael Saylor says, which I think is according to power law, something you should actually expect, then we suddenly talk about a company of value of like 6 trillion now because yes, that and that, maybe 10 trillion, maybe 10 trillion. Now it's not going to be the biggest company. Nvidia, as we speak today, is already at 4 or 5, no, sold off 4 to 5 trillion. So a while ago, I might have said, yeah, he has a chance. I think it's going to be tougher. But having said that, if you have now, and that's very important, if you now have a Bitcoin treasury company, which has underlying businesses as well, in the Bitcoin ecosystem somehow, then suddenly the underlying businesses, if Bitcoin goes up by a factor 100, that might even go up by a factor 1,000. And by the way, I don't want to say certain things offline. We can talk about that. Personal experience. That is possible then. I think that if something that's even like go down to 100 times, so say Bitcoin goes up 10 times in the next 8 to 9 years, let's assume that. Then if you're in the ecosystem of Bitcoin, suddenly they profit much more. It's not all the time. For example, in mining, not necessarily true that the miner is going to be that's still a great investment, but other stuff like infrastructure can really outgrow and outperform Bitcoin massively. So if you combine that, the treasury plus underlying operating businesses, and I think that's what I see as a real company which has a chance. If Bitcoin does what I think it will do, becoming potentially one of the biggest, maybe biggest company, is to say, I start off with Bitcoin as my treasury. That's what I have. But this is not like I have it and never going to do anything with that. No, that's my benchmark. If I think I have something which can make much more money than Bitcoin, but it's because I know what Bitcoin does, I have a view, and I do that over and over. Then I have a chance suddenly to make a lot of money. The interesting thing is you have to be much more careful where to invest in, because if you have Bitcoin, you will say, I'm not going to give it away for something which might make 10%, 15% every year. That's what we have currently. People say, if I can make 10% or 8%, I'm happy, because you lose money having money in a bank. But here you say, if I have Bitcoin, I should make 30, 35%. I have to find something which beats that. That's very rare, but in operating businesses, you have that. And that's where you have Bitcoin, but ultimately you invest in operating businesses. Then you might end up with something which could ultimately be the biggest company in the world.
We discussed a highly profitable business that chooses Bitcoin as their savings technology.
Absolutely, absolutely, and then you can always use new cash coming through the system to invest in Bitcoin, and then say, okay, now I have another opportunity. I put it that way. Absolutely. So I think that is so. By the way, and that's another interesting point you raise. What I've seen lately is that a lot of unsuccessful businesses in the US, especially as well, like some of these biotech things, is like, it's not going anywhere. Let's call it Bitcoin Treasury, and the share price pops up. That reminds me, I'm a bit older than you are. That reminds me of the .com, where like people like, I'm now a .com. It didn't matter what the hell these guys were doing. They didn't have I tell you an interesting story of that one. The ultimate Public.com wasn't really like that. I remember I had always like the Bloomberg, and there was another announcement. Here is now the company.com, and this is what the CEO says. We don't really have a product. We don't really think yet that we know which direction we're going to go to, but we consider product development somehow in the .com world. And the freaking price went up. So pretty much we talked about an empty company, which we just put .com on, it was about billions. Okay, that is interesting. And that was a bit what we experience now with the treasury companies. You have a lot of failed businesses. And I'm not a believer. If you have a failed business corporation, you should actually add Bitcoin to that to say, well, then the price pops and then I can do something. No, it's a failed business for a reason. Failed business, and Bitcoin should actually embrace that. Shouldn't exist. Full stop. Shouldn't exist. That's Austin School of Thinking. So I'm surprised when it's being celebrated that actually failed business people and failed businesses thinking they can rescue themselves by putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet. It hurts only one thing, and one thing only, the Bitcoin community. Having said that, if you have a very profitable business, successful business, and you're willing to say, that's a good idea, I got in Bitcoin partially or full as my treasury stock, totally different.
Yeah, I always find it funny when I see on the internet or on some startup show, people coming in and saying, we are pre-market, pre-revenue. I'm like, okay, so you don't have anything.
Oh yeah, that's another of these things, which, by the way, the same even for important. There's like in a Bitcoin world, there's, you know it better than I do from a conference, they're all like these startups, like all this like new ideas. I invest as well in startups. I started a long time ago, and it's worked and doesn't work, but usually it doesn't work. The successful startups are the one which actually sort of like can make money rather quickly. If you cannot make money within like 1 or 2 years or 1 year, you shouldn't exist. And some of them are living in the illusion, well, give me a bit of money, and then I have that product and that market. And like, it's not easy to create products which people like. Actually, it's just not easy. But if you figure out how to make money from day one, you're going to be very likely very successful. And people forget, they say, oh, but we had like Microsoft and Apple and Google. People forget all these companies, which are the biggest of the biggest today, were very profitable almost early on. that didn't really need a lot of funding. I checked it once. That didn't need a lot of funding. If you have a good idea, a good product, you make money. If you cannot make money with the idea you have, that's not going to fly. And if you give me the freaking hockey stick in 5 years and everything, I'm 58 years old. I've seen too much of this stuff. I'm not buying that. So I think in the Bitcoin scene as well, and it's interesting. I see a lot of they have different ideas and different companies, and I always ask, and I come across as not a nice guy. Then, do you actually make money? And if people say no, but we are in talks with, and in 5 years, I'm that's great. You're a wonderful guy. You're not gonna touch my wallet. Not gonna happen.
We come back to the social thing. Is like, we talk to this guy, that's why give me money.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's like actually that's more on a funny note and so sad. And I'm not gonna tell who that was. This guy was. It's unbelievable. A CEO of a major company in Germany who I happen to know. And in 2020, was it, or 2021, he said, listen, Pius, call me up. I want to get involved there, even with the firm, a big firm. I want to invest in them, millions. Why would you? No, it's great. I looked at them. I think it's a scam. My view. I wouldn't do it with my own money, and I think you shouldn't do it with your money and not with your investors' money. I wouldn't, but okay. And the story was, and he said, and I will get that, but you don't understand. Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and Elon Musk are invested there. I couldn't believe that. Okay, no, I know. You just said it all. If Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, or Bill Gates were invested in a little freaking German startup, I think we would have heard about that. So it just gives you an idea how naive a lot of stuff is going on, how crazy. And but he was in talk with a very charismatic sales guy who said any random, sorry for my French, shit. Whatever he had to say to sell it. And by the way, fast forward, the guy even invested. And now he said once oh, you were right. I didn't have to be a genius, obviously. And I think that's what you have. So therefore, I think coming back to Bitcoin world, when it comes here to this ecosystem, I think it's important as well that companies are being built around the Bitcoin network. I think Bitcoin world did a very bad job in terms of not just, I think the product like Bitcoin is it's not always easy to grasp. I think a bigger issue as well, we've been very bad in product development of Bitcoin world. I think it's not very intuitive. You have some of the geeks who say, oh, so intelligent, you're never going to understand. So I think the task has to be that people, regular people, just like iPhone have experience. It's just okay, I got that. I know we're getting there, and exchanges help doing that as well. I think that's a very, very important part as well, that you have the consumer experience. I think that was Bitcoin world has done a very bad job, but I think it's always tough to say, is it first we have to convince people and then I got the consumer experience. But I think I wanna say, I think Steve Jobs said it so wonderful. I had a lot of great quotes. He said, I gonna actually come up with products which people even don't know today that they're gonna need it. And I think that's has to be the thinking of it. If we're in this space to say, what is it? And he talked about consumers, hundreds of millions of people create the biggest company in the world. I think that's where we have not done a good job. And by the way, Kenneth, you and I met at the conference, we've been conferences. There's great people, but I'm struggling when I look at the product side, simple product side, where I would say there was one thing which really blew me off my feet, not once. Well, I was saying no, nothing. I don't know how you think about that, Robin. But you see, I'm like, oh, great. I cannot wait to give money to this guy. By the way, it happened and it worked very well. I did it actually in the Bitcoin space when I got many years ago, where it actually really oh, I want to force me on it and take my money. And it worked out very well. I think I don't see that when I'm there, and I don't know why it's that. Maybe you have an answer to that. That's very important.
I mean, there's a lot going on, but I also don't see anything like that. That's why I'm staying in Bitcoin, because I guess especially at Bitcoiner, you're like, Bitcoin already does so great, and the best thing you can do is like just be in Bitcoin. I mean, now I actually haven't told you about that. I co-founded a small company. We did some
But then I
Microseed
shouldn't
thing.
have said it.
no, no, it's like, and it's funny because I literally laughed when you were saying with the funding, because we were approached already by 2-3 investors, but we're like, why would we get them in? Like, because we are one of those, because we made money since the starting point, and we can just slowly grow organically. And we said now the only real reason to let investor in, if they have a way better position to scale it, and they want to just completely take it over, if like, I don't know, a cold card, or like a big company that does something with self custody, sees the product. I'm like, oh yeah, we want to have this in the portfolio, and they want to buy the whole thing. That's the only way that we are saying like we let investors in, because we can just scale it slowly ourselves. I mean, of course, there's always the case of like growing faster, but then we're like, growing fast, we can also break things. And we already do it together. Like, we have 3 people, and it does great. And I love the process, because I've never done that. Like, I built a website, I now build out the affiliate marketing and all of that. It's a really fun process, because I've never done that before, and I learn a lot. But it's actually the other way around, where we like, why would we need investors? Because we already make money. So we just have to figure out how to get the word out more.
Absolutely. Like, you will do that. You will do that only if you say, okay, you wanna become a multi-billion valued business, and you will be on a stock exchange. But here again, that's a dream. Almost no one ever gets there,
and we are not getting there. Like,
you see, and that's a very important mindset to have. There one, and you're not far away. You're in Vienna. There is actually one which really did exactly that. They've been successful. Right time, right place, and I scaled it perfectly, and I watched it obviously closely. Still there. And I've been lucky as well, but I really had just the right things just fit together very nicely, and in the right market, and get things right. And yes, that's the huge success. But most are not like that. And most people think when they start they're going to be the next Google. It's not going to happen. But having said that, I'm not saying that now do it at all. Absolutely. If you can make money from day one, do it. Do it every day. You love it. And by the way, there is always, you're not going to have trades here very likely. You won't have the guy who gives the 500 million tomorrow. And you don't even need that. There's always different ways to say, well, can I work together with others, or under an umbrella of some? That's the interesting ideas. I think that is something which I would say that's a bit missing, to say that almost like, if I really had an idea now as an investor, I would say, what's missing is maybe somebody who really sets up an investment company, which is listed, which invests only in this type of like small company, which make money, gonna grow what they grow, leave them alone. And now, why would a guy like you do that? To say, well, listen, you gotta be paid in my shares, liquid shares. And as well, you're gonna look around what else of companies out there, because there are a lot of them. And these people can do it in a very calm way. They're not getting stressed out that I need new funding, but they're not being forced, oh, you have to increase your sales by a factor of 10. And they can even benefit from working with other people if they want to. So I think that what I'm just describing in a nutshell exists. It exists. Actually, it's a company called Constellation Software. I don't know whether you heard of that. A Canadian company, which actually compounded 35% since I listed in 2007. And what do? They buy all these smallish software companies, which make bottom line money, have 5 to 10 people, make 5 to 10 million revenue, make 500,000 to 1 million. They own 1,000 of them. And the beautiful thing is, they're actually component not totally different from that. The component better than NVIDIA and others. this company. Nobody knows. But that's exactly say, leave them alone. They do what they do. And they have a very simple incentive model. Nobody's being diluted, and they keep on buying new companies. That's the only thing I could imagine could work very well.
It's just a thousand is a lot. Like you have to keep
Yes,
opting for all of them.
it's Constellation Software. It's a great company.
Interesting. But yeah, like, and we were also saying that because like, at this current form, like we have like a stamping kit where you like can stamp your seed phrase on a 1-inch washer, and it's like all 24 words on there. I've done stamp seed before, I done Seedo before, all those different devices, and I was like, when Daniel came to me with that, I was like, oh, like that's like 10x better. But even though the product might be great for the niche, there's a lot of do-it-yourself guys. Like it's like you can do stamping on metal for like a few bucks on Amazon.
Can you explain to me in a second what it does?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the table. You put your washer in here. That's like a normal washer that you can get on in German we call it Beilagsscheibe in a store. You screw it in. Then you have the table. And on a table, you put the punch on there, you punch your letter on there, and we have those click mechanism. And so there are 60 settings. And so you get in one line 60 characters, and the second line, because we have two different lines with those two different holes, you get 120 characters on one side of the washer, on the other side another 120 characters. So you get 240 characters on one washer, which is enough for any seed phrase with 24 words. And with the seed phrase, you can even like short it down to the first 4 letters.
Yeah, 24. Yeah, usually not only the first 4, but let's assume on average everything you have. You want to have proper English word, and you say, let's say 6 words, 6 times 24. Like, yeah, should be enough.
Exactly.
On average.
If you are really unlucky and get like a very long seed phrase, you could run into a problem. But then there's like things with that, I just as a customer, because I do a lot of those like stamping things, I did not want to buy every time a new stamp seed for like $50 or $100 or like a new thing. And so that's why I was really intrigued, because like, it's just like I go to the store, buy like a small washer for like a few cents or $1, or like for $5 on Amazon, the titanium ones, if you care about titanium, and you put it in there and like you do it. But it's not an idea that will list on a public market and will be worth billions, because it's like a small niche product. It's a physical thing. It's just for me, it's a product where I just like it as a Bitcoiner, and I know a lot of Bitcoiners also like it, and so I want to be involved in that. And it's really great learning experiment. I said it multiple times, but like I learned a lot about selling a thing online.
So, and just make sure that it's not getting hacked, because the product was like, your stamp was not working, and suddenly you need guarantees. But I like that. You see, that is a type of thing. Straightforward, simple, not rocket science. Sorry, don't get me wrong, but see, it makes money. It's as simple as that. It's not like, because people often have this idea of like creating weird products, and I myself was when I was in trading, that's all about product development. Like, how do I show the price? How do I create the package? Portfolio, parts of the portfolio, everything is constantly, and most of the stuff doesn't work out. You sort of like have to constantly work on stuff. And I think it's important to say, yeah, you have something which makes money, but you sort of like constantly change a bit, improve it here and there. And that's what it is. But most people have this like crazy idea where the thing is worth trillions. And I sort of give me hundreds of millions, and then maybe I can make it work. No, you don't need that. So it's wonderful. It's actually beautiful. I like that.
I just thought about that because it grew out of like Daniel, who he invented it originally, and he hit his finger multiple times while he used the stamp seed, and then he was wondering, is there like not a better solution? So he actually did like 3D printing himself, a little thing, and then with a guy, he kind of developed this whole thing. I think it started like actually over a year ago. It needed like 6 months for prototyping to actually have a product that you can not only use yourself but go on the market also with. But that's the thing, like someone developed it because it solved the problem for himself that he had, and then he was wondering after he solved it for himself, maybe someone else also has it. And I think Las Vegas, he bought like a small booth just to test it out, what people think. And it was crazy, like how people were positively seeing it.
Because people understand that immediately.
That's a super simple idea. Like it's
like you don't have to say you don't have to explain quantum physics first. So I think that's great.
One more thing on that note, I hope you have time because I think we're already a little bit over the time. How do you see why you come from Europe, but you have spent a long time also in America. You've been with the 2008 crisis there. How do you look at why Europeans seems to always lag behind when it comes to like Bitcoin, and when it comes to like the big internet companies? They're all coming, like the Google, Facebook, all of them. Is it just because they have like a different attitude, and the Europeans are like kind of making more of those social studies and making more of those regulatory things, and they're like, well, oh, need Mika, we need all those things, and they're not really like doing the innovative stuff?
But various things. But I think I would say I would sum it up first, the question, and then I explain a bit with Gordon Gekko's famous line, "Creed is good." That's the American way of doing stuff. Creed is very good in my view. That drives you. That's like, I want to make a lot of money. I want to have a successful life. I want people knowing me. That drives them. That's like nothing is so like can stop me. And I show it. If I'm rich, I show it. Everybody should be seeing it. And guess what? If you're a young guy and you're 15, 14, 15, a girl, and you see rich people and you see them in the neighborhood, they have the private jet, they do all that. Are you really become then Greta Thunberg and say, well, I want to, like, no, you're like, how does he do that? Because it's rather cool. I want to have a private jet. I don't like, it's very human. Like, how do I do that? That's like this, that's like the sort of like, it infects people in a positive way. And then, of course, people have a different way to do that. Now, in order to enable that, you have to have the willingness that people give you money, are willing to bet on you, to trust you. Now, what the US has, they have going on since the 70s, this sort of like ancient investment, venture capital, where they bet on ideas and people and say, we love that. That's going to make us tons of money. Again, because it's going to make us, if that works out, tons of money. For example, there is this guy, his name is Andreas von Bechtolzheim. You might have never, the co-founder of some Microsystems. Bizarrely, actually, he just grew up 10 kilometers far away where I grew up in Lake Constance, southern part of Germany, but he lives in the US forever. So he's a co-founder of some Microsystem. I think he's founded in 1982. He was Munich and then Stanford. I don't know him, but the story is an interesting one. In 1990, he already like retired, was a rich guy. And what he says, one of the things is like in 1998 or 7, 2 people came in, weird people telling, oh, like search engine, we like blah, blah, blah. And then he said, listen, I'm going to give you hundreds of thousands of dollars check right here. The only condition is the working title of the company you showed me has to be the company name. That's the only condition. I loved it otherwise. His name was Google. That's the company. So, and he said in one interview, if I remember correctly, that he said what's interesting is he worked his butt off to make a lot of money and became wealthy with some Microsystem, but he made so much more money and became the ultimate multi-billionaire with one investment in with people. And that's the whole thing. You believe in people, in ideas, you get it, and you give them like, here, hundreds of thousands. Start, do it. That is a very American type of thinking, because the idea that they want to grow, there's no jealousy, actually, they just want to become bigger and bigger. And then you have a function capital markets. You have like Wall Street. You have people who constantly talk and sell ideas. It goes on from the morning to the evening. When you, for example, in the US and you're in a kitchen, there's like usually CNBC, CNN, or whatever. It's all stock markets everywhere. Bloomberg coming over the ticker. You go to Europe, to Austria, Germany, wherever, you see freaking Friedrich Merz talking about, I don't even know what. Like, how crazy. It's not even the same zip code. There's no energy, nothing there. It's like, oh, but we do the engineering. And secondly, as well, and that's, I think, is important. Why did Europe miss that? Arrogance, massive arrogance, cultural arrogance, to think we have better culture. We know better. The Americans are crazy. The Americans are like, really, they're willing to fight for big ideas. AI, they captured that very early on. They understand energy. We need a lot and cheap energy in order to fuel our economy. And I think that is the fantastic thing. And Europe, not one of them. And I think it's social sciences as well. It's as well the fact to say, well, but somehow socialism runs very deep in Europe in a very weird way. I don't know why. Right? And if somebody says, I'm a rich guy, people look like, how can you say that? You're not supposed to say about that. I think in the US, you celebrate wealth, success, and entrepreneurship. In Europe, you're like, I don't even want to talk about that. I want to hide that I'm successful, because then maybe they're going to be jealous. And that really holds you back. And then I think the last thing as well, and that might have to do more with Germany. It's like my thesis. Germany clearly had this very dark history, 12 years of Nazi Germany under Hitler. And back then, when you follow history, Germans really had crazy ideas, and I built big things as well on the way, like jet engines with the Russian, like all type of stuff, nuclear bomb. They tried to do big things, which was surprising. Like they had like the constraints they were in the middle of wars. And then I had this crazy guy constantly talking like big ideas. And I think later on, we got trained in school as well. Don't really talk big pictures. Don't really say we want to go to Mars and we want to do that. It's like, that didn't serve us very well. So you're almost being trained to put yourself down. Can you imagine if a German were to say, we're going to be great. I want to go to Mars. I'm going to take all you guys from Mars. It was like, oh, look at that. Look at history. America, no, we want to have that, because actually it's a positive thing. And that fits very well because of our bad history as well. We think we shouldn't really dream big, and everybody's being held back, and we like communism. Even this stuff never worked out. This is crazy. And even when it comes to simple things like stock market, Germany, 1996, Deutsche Telekom, like the state-owned, back then state-owned telecommunication company of Germany, got listed at the stock exchange. And the government, everybody's like, rah, rah, let's list that. Everybody has to buy it. The people's equity, Volksaktie. This thing was a freaking bad investment. 30 years later, when you talk to people like my age, boomers, as they call them, you cannot really invest in equity, because look at Deutsche Telekom, like, you missed freaking everything. And I think that's the whole thing. There's like, if you take risk, you think you should be paid. And if you fail, oh, you see, I told you. And in the US, it's okay. I lost. Let's keep trying and think big and sell the dream. And you have a deep market and investor base, which is willing to fund this whole thing. I would say Bitcoin, Germany especially, was early. Was actually sort of like early. It's like the little meetups and little things. And the US, that's not really there. But then when they get an idea, you've seen it. They really scale it up to the moon. And they're like, here, best conferences, best meetings. If you talk to people, like you have a European guy on stage, he talks what he talks. We've been in conference together. You see Jack Mallers? Oh my God. The guy says crazy stuff up there, really crazy shit. But guess what? You need him. And we think as European, holy smoke, this guy is nuts. And Michael Saylor, as sleazy as he presents the stuff, it's important as well to sell a dream and a story. And I think Europeans don't like that because they're jealous and because they're guilty. They feel guilty. Jealousy and guilt. I think these are the European combination combined with arrogance, cultural arrogance. That sounds not big, but I said, but here.
It's interesting. And I never looked at the jealousy and the envy of that, but it obviously makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And there's always like those, like, you don't even want to say how much money you make. You don't even want to say that you're successful, or do you have like those things. You kind of want to just say like, oh yeah, you're constantly underselling yourself if you're successful because you don't want to piss someone off. But actually, people should embrace that because this means someone you can learn from this person. Like if he figures something out, he should actually be on a speakerphone.
To the end, just you have to be careful even with this person in the United States. As during my career, I met quite a few billionaires and really rich people, successful people in their own right. And in one case, it was like we were arguing about like, I think $2,000 on a trade. And I said to him, like, listen, why the hell would you care? You're a multi-billionaire. If I was on the other side. And like, oh, he yelled at me. This is the freaking reason, you dumb idiot. That's why you're not a billionaire. I'm a billionaire. I love it. You see, I love it. That's the whole thing. You can say, well, I think you're a billionaire. But you see, you just say it. And it's not like you're open. And I was a big billionaire, by the way. And I think you wouldn't have that in Europe. Oh, what do you mean? How would you know that? Of course, he says, I'm rich. I'm super rich. And that's the reason. And you're never going to be rich because you're an idiot. And I like that.
It's so fun. I love that. I would wish the podcast just goes on for on, but I think we make a point here.
I have to run. Yeah.
I have one more question for you that I ask each and every one of my returning guests. The question is, what have you learned outside of Bitcoin since your last appearance? I think it was like 7 months ago, something like that.
Yeah. Oh, I haven't really learned that properly yet, but I read it. And do I have it here? Yeah. Gödel, that one. It's a big thing, and it's Kurt Gödel, guy from Vienna, went into Princeton, and he's proven that even in mathematics or above mathematics, a big thing in logic that there are certain statements which are true, but you cannot prove them that they're true. And that was like literally the atomic bomb going off in mathematics in 1931. Because they assumed with logic and symbolism we can prove anything inside a system. And he said, no, it's not possible. And this thing had huge influence on Alan Turing. And actually that had huge influence on society because he actually understood that you sort of like can put actually mathematics into numbers. That later on, when you think about computer, you can put everything into numbers effectively. So that was his whole idea. So that's what I read. It's called Gödel's incompleteness theorem. That's a small book, big idea. Big idea.
I love
If you
it.
have time, read it. It's from the 50s. It's a wonderful book. Gödel's proof.
I love that. Really cool. Thanks so much. We have an end routine really quickly where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question, how are you helping your kids to understand Bitcoin?
Well, that's a great question. And I do it the following way. And I have not really too much. I installed Blue Wallet. on their phones, on their iPhones, and once in a while I wire some Satoshi over, and then I ask certain questions, and if they know, then I say, okay, I give you a bit more Satoshis. Or if they work during the summertime, then I say, okay, I'm willing to do whatever you make, I match it with Satoshi. So that's the way.
My father did that also. Cool.
Yeah, interesting. But now my middle daughter like, oh, but Bitcoin went down. Like yeah, okay, I like that. It's like she watches that. Like she like. But I always say that no, you don't on the screen of Blue Wallet. Just put it to BTC or to Satoshi. Where you can see. And like, no. I have US dollar. And so like, she measures it. Like, okay.
That's interesting. When I was my first, I think 2-3 summer jobs, my father also said like, you don't earn a lot, so I'll just match what you make because it should. I want to incentivize you working in the summers versus you partying in the summers.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. That's the way I do it.
Really cool. Thank you so much, Pius, for being on the podcast. I think we already showed and mentioned the Twitter handle. I think that's the best way for people to reach and find your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's not just it's I write in German and English. It's not just Bitcoin. I go across, you see, politics. So whatever I have strong opinions about, and I might be often very wrong.
Thank you so much.
And some of the stuff I hope I'm wrong. Okay. Thank you, Marvin.
Thank you so much, Pius, for being on. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.